To hear more on this following the collapse and recovery efforts, we are now joined from Nairobi in Kenya via Skype by our East Africa correspondent, Sarah Kimani. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Now, do we know how many people still remain unaccounted for so far, and what confirmed deaths do we have so far?
Well, we know now that at least 4 people have been rescued alive from the rubble. This is, if you listen to the story, there is a mother there talking about her friend who still had not been accounted for by the time that story was going on air. The Kenya Red Cross Society now saying that mother and 2 of her children have been rescued alive, as well as 1 other person. However, we also understand that 2 people have been removed from the rubble when they're already dead. Now, rescue and recovery efforts are still ongoing at the scene. Authorities earlier told us that this may take up to 3 days because of the nature in which the house collapsed. It actually caved in, and so about 7 floors have gone under the water, so we are only able to see the top parts of the building. So it's a very delicate operation.
Now, Sarah, we've learned that the building and the one adjacent were condemned by the National Construction Authority and were earmarked for demolition. How did the victims gain access and residents in this particular building, and how did the building really come up if it was condemned and there was no approval?
Well, the building was not approved when it was built in 2007, and then when buildings collapsed last year, city authorities moved around most of the low-income housing areas, and this was one of those which were earmarked for demolition. So usually what they do is they'll mark an X and say and give people notices to vacate. People, however, never got to vacate. The governor of Nairobi, Dr. Evans Kidero, saying although they had planned to demolish it, there was a lot of security concerns because the area is heavily populated, so they really never got to demolish it. And yesterday, when it became clear that the building was going to cave in and collapse because there were already cracks appearing on the walls, authorities actually came in and ordered people to evacuate. But some of them said they wanted to stay until the landlord sends them back their money, their rent money or their deposits. And so most of them decided to stay put. 128 of them were evacuated. We still do not know how many are trapped under the rubble.
What's the reaction been from the landlord and the owners of the building?
We understand the landlord is at large. The caretaker who was in charge of the building was actually helping with the evacuation efforts yesterday, but today he has not been seen. In fact, the government is now looking for the landlord or the caretaker to be able to give them the building plans that were used to construct the house, so they can be able to see structurally how the building looks like, and that way then they can know exactly where the rooms are, where the partitions are, and where it is likely that people could be trapped in the building. The building was on wetland, so what happened is once the cracks started coming and it was not very structurally strong, it just started caving in slowly, and yesterday it completely gave in at about 10 p.m. That's around this time last night.
Now, Sarah, the adjacent building, which has also been marked for demolition, is it still occupied as we speak? And what's the reaction of the people who are still occupying it, seeing the building adjacent to it already having caved in and people still being rescued and people dead?
Well, the tenants who live in that building are among those who were evacuated by the government, and they have been asked to seek alternative shelter because most of them, that is not their building, so they are tenants, they're renting, and so it is easier for them to seek alternative shelter. A lot of them, however, saying that they do not have money at this time. They pay about $400 per room, and they stay families of up to 5 in those rooms. Most of them, the reason why you see that area is very heavily populated is because they are industrial. It's an industrial zone, and so people work around there.
Now, Sarah, we learned that people have complained about what they call a slow response by rescuers. Similar voices were heard in the previous building collapses. What can be said is the status of the ability of rescuers when responding to such events? Hi, Sarah. All right, we seem to have lost the connection there with Sarah Kimani, our East Africa correspondent, who's just giving us an update on the building collapse that happened last night, where a number of people have lost their lives and rescue operations are still taking place.